The Secrets of Doctor Who is brought to you by the Star Quest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give. You're listening to The Secrets of Doctor Who, where we discuss everything about the hit BBC series, Doctor Who. And today we're discussing the fifth Doctor story, Terminus. I'm Dom Bettinelli, and joining me today on the panel are Father Cory Sticha. Hi, Father Cory.
How's it going, Dom?
And Jimmy Akin. Hi, Jimmy.
Howdy, Dom.
Folks, remember to like The Secrets of Doctor Who. We're on Facebook at facebook.com/Secrets of Doctor Who. You can also retweet us on Twitter, where we're at SQPN, and be sure to leave us comments in both places. We'd love to hear from you there. I want to tell you about another show on the network you're sure to enjoy called The Secrets of Movies and TV Shows, where we talk about all kinds of movies and TV shows besides specific ones like Doctor Who. And you can find that wherever fine podcasts are found or at sqpn.com/secrets. And finally, I want to encourage you to stick around to the end of the show because we have a little bit of listener feedback that we want to share with you and discuss. But first, before we talk about Terminus, there's obviously some news. You're getting this discussion weeks after the news came out, but we thought we'd throw our 2 cents in about the new Doctor.
It's new to us, okay?
Yeah.
That's right. It's still new for us, so be excited with us once again. So the BBC has announced the new Doctor is a young man named Ncuti Gatwa.
Maybe.
Well, I'm going off of what the BBC said his name is pronounced. So whatever is pronounced, that's how we're going to do it.
Maybe. That's so. His name is. He's of Rwandan origin, although he grew up in Scotland, and his name is spelled Ncuti. And in other languages, when you have an N on the front of a word, it normally has a phonetic value. And so I suspect that English speakers in Great Britain have just had difficulty making that initial N sound, and it has dropped off the name, and the BBC has the wimpy, inaccurate, let's accommodate people and not ask them to say a combination of phonemes they're not used to saying, wimpy guide. To pronunciation.
Okay. Well,
it's actually pretty easy to train yourself to say combinations like that. All you have to do is imagine a word that has the combination of phonemes you want in the middle of it. So you could, like the English word sun has a final N sound, so you could say sun shooty as a kind of stepping stone to getting to say nshooty.
If that's how Rwandan has the, I'm just thinking because Irish has like letter combinations that do not sound at all like either of the two letters, and I'm wondering if Rwandan is the same thing. But
well,
anyway.
it could, but those Irish has that because it has used the Latin alphabet for a long time, and it's had the same kind of phonemic drift that English has, so that the spelling is way off from the pronunciation. But if you see Ncuti in another language, it's plausible C is a sh sound because there's not a single letter in the Latin alphabet for sh. So C gets used in place of sh and ch and things like that. But if you've got an N in front of it, that should have a pronounced value. I mean, what is it? What spelling system is this supposed to be? English?
I don't know. Well, anyway, in the national language of Rwanda, which is Kinyarwanda, his name means friend. So, which is
cool.
Or companion, even you could say.
That would be ironic.
That would be ironic. So, in any case, he's the new Doctor. He's young-ish. I'm not sure how old he is.
29, I thought.
Yeah, he's late 20s.
Not the youngest, though. I think Matt Smith was the youngest when he first became Doctor, so he was younger still. So
just slightly.
Yeah. I have never seen him in anything. I don't know, of what kind of actor he's like, but
he's a comedian.
Okay, comic actor. That's worked out in the past. So,
well, he's known for one series, kind of a teenage high school type series. He's a character in that, but I think that's was really his first big role to begin with. So I don't think he has a lot of major roles that we can kind of find out more about him. So it'll be interesting to see how he plays Doctor. And of course, just because he's got one way that he plays a character doesn't mean that he's going to play the Doctor that way by any stretch of the imagination. I mean,
right.
Yeah.
Right.
One thing that Russell T Davies was pretty quick to say, I noticed in the interviews, was that this was not, so since he's Rwandan, he happens to be black. And, there's this question of, okay, look, we just had our first woman doctor, Jodie Whittaker. Will they go back to being a man? Or will that be regressive, like a strike against the cause of diversity and representation? And well, another way to do that is have a race swap. Mm-hmm. And Russell T Davies was very quick to say this was not made on that basis. We thought we had someone else, and then Ncuti came in and just knocked it out of the park, and we chose him because he was the best actor we saw.
Yeah.
Which could be true, but either way, I'm looking forward to someone other than Jodie Whittaker and someone with better Doctor Who sensibilities than Chris Chibnall writing.
Yes. I like Jodie Whittaker. I liked her as an actress before. I just think she got terrible writing, and that's I think that's going to be the big difference, hopefully.
I have nothing against Jodie Whittaker as an actress or a person. She just ends up playing characters I don't like. Even her character in Broadchurch, which I've seen all 3 seasons of. The first 2 seasons were really good. The 3rd season was less good.
Yeah.
But her character becomes progressively more unsympathetic as Broadchurch rolls along, to where by the end of it, it's like, I don't like this character anymore.
Although Chris Chibnall wrote that too. So
yeah, I know. Yeah. Yeah.
So it's hard to say, but yeah, I agree that it's hard to say, how she would have been under, you just can't say how Moffat or Russell T Davies would have written her or whatever.
And we have criticized Chris Chibnall's writings on Doctor Who, so I mean that shouldn't surprise you that even when he is the showrunner, we're still going to criticize his writings. At least a couple of, we've each had episodes that we haven't liked of his. So
43. So we should also talk about the other news, maybe.
I don't know which other news you were thinking of. I was going to mention, speaking of new doctors, we may as well talk about old doctors, because David Tennant's 10th Doctor and Donna Noble are going to be coming back in some capacity for one of the upcoming specials.
Yeah, that was the other news I was going to bring up. Was Russell T Davies said for the show's 60th anniversary celebration in 2023. So there's going to be a special later this year for the regeneration of the 13th Doctor that celebrates the BBC's 100th. So that's one celebration. But next year is Doctor Who's 60th already. It seems like we just did the 50th. And they're bringing back David Tennant and Catherine Tate somehow. We don't know how. We don't know in what context. Probably one of those timeline crossing things like they did with the 5th Doctor and the 10th Doctor sort of thing. Is my guess.
It'll likely be somewhere in the middle of the Doctor and Donna time frame, where it's in the middle of that season somewhere, kind of like they do with Big Finish likes to do, where this happened after this episode and things like that.
The for people who may be wondering why we're being vague about this, it's because in Donna's final appearance, she had gained so much knowledge that she couldn't handle it, and her brain was basically going to explode. And so the Doctor mind wiped her memories of her time with the Doctor to save her life. And so the question was like, how can she and David Tennant come back if she remembers him, her mind will burn and she will die. So how are they going to handle that issue? And an obvious one of many possible sci-fi ways is, this is just earlier in their timeline.
Yep.
Right. Now, I would love to see Wilf, her grandfather, back, but of course, Bernard Cribbins is still with us for now. But but he's quite elderly. He's over 90.
Yeah.
So that would be hard for him. But it's, I really like the Donna Noble companion. I think Russell T Davies created that pairing. So I would love to see him write them again. David Tennant's one of my favorite doctors.
Of the three Tennant companions, Rose, Martha, and Donna, I think there's fairly substantial agreement among fans that Donna's the favorite.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I think so. Yeah. I saw fans, there was much rejoicing when this was announced. I actually wanted David Tennant to come back as the Doctor, the 14th Doctor again, but in some way.
I'm kind of glad they didn't go that way. I really kind of am. He already had 2 regenerations. I mean, come on.
Well, we could hit the meta crisis or something.
Yeah. Plus the meta crisis. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, that's the news. That's our reaction to the news. There may be more news by the time you hear this, and we'll talk about that.
There will be. Russell Davies has already been hinting more news on Twitter.
Which is, frankly, I like this switch from the previous switches. We hold all cards to our chest until the very last moment we can reveal it. Sort of stuff like this. There's no reason not to let people know this sort of stuff ahead of time, including BBC, when shows will air. It's always very handy to have that.
And maybe that's Russell T Davies saying, if you want to save the show and you want me back, here's how it works. I am going to be letting more information out than you like to. Sorry.
Yeah. This is how it works in the social media age. Anyway, so that's the news. Let's move on to discussing today's topic, which is this 5th Doctor story called Terminus. And if you could give us a recap of what happens in Terminus.
The Black Guardian has ordered the 5th Doctor's new companion, Turlough, to kill the Doctor, but Turlough's heart isn't into the plan. Reluctantly, Turlough sabotages the TARDIS, which triggers a failsafe, causing the TARDIS to seek out and open a portal to the nearest spaceship. On the spaceship, the Doctor and crew meet a couple of space pirates with extreme 1980s hairstyles who are after the ship's cargo. But it turns out that the cargo is actually a bunch of space lepers being taken to another larger spaceship called Terminus, which happens to be sitting at the center of the known universe. Terminus is run by a heartless corporation that operates it using a bunch of guards who are human slaves known as the Veneer. Another of the slaves is the Garm, a giant hulking space dogman. Nyssa becomes infected with the space plague, and eventually the Garm cures her by exposing her to a massive dose of radiation. Nyssa realizes that the cure works, but it's too dangerous and needs to be refined. Meanwhile, the Doctor discovers that Terminus is actually a gigantic time ship, and once, when it was in flight, it dumped a load of unstable hydrogen fuel into a void, causing Event 1, the Big Bang, before being thrown forward in time to its present location, still at the center of the universe. Tegan and Turlough have had almost nothing to do this episode except crawl through ductwork, but fortunately, Turlough messes with some wiring that apparently causes Terminus to prepare to dump another load of explosive hydrogen fuel. The Doctor realizes this time it will destroy the universe, but he's not physically strong enough to operate the controls to stop it, so he enlists the Garm, the giant space dogman, to do it for him. He and Nyssa then explain that they can free the Veneer from enslavement to the Terminus Corporation, and Nyssa decides to stay on Terminus to help the Garm perfect the cure for the space plague so that they can help all the space lepers. The end.
Okay, so lots going on there, and yet it felt at times like there was nothing going on except crawling through tunnels.
I looked up so there's a 2-volume comedic history of Doctor Who called Space Helmet for a Cow. Mm-hmm. And I looked up this episode in that, and the author, Paul Kirkley, says the middle part of the Black Guardian trilogy, Terminus, has a reputation for being a bit slow and boring, at least until Nyssa's clothes fall off. It's certainly light on Earthshock-style whizzes and bangs, and being set aboard what is effectively a leper colony, the use of the word prompted a complaint on behalf of the leprosy mission, it's not exactly a laugh riot. But, like writer Stephen Gallagher's previous story, Warrior's Gate, Terminus treats its audience with intelligence and rewards their patience with a script full of interesting ideas and rich dialogue. I thought at points this had kind of a cinematic pacing, like what you'd find in a movie. And I saw a comment that Eric Sayward, the script editor in this period, thought this would have worked better as a movie rather than being cut into 4 parts. But it has a fairly leisurely pace, but I found it creepy and effective. And if you watch it like it's a movie, I think it comes off better.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Also, Kirkley in Space Helmet for a Cow had noted something else I'd read elsewhere. Gallagher, that's the author, envisioned the Garm as a sort of shape in the darkness and was dismayed to find he ended up as a giant talking dog. The costume was so hot that the actor inside, R.J. Bell, kept fainting, possibly because they kept leaving him in the car without opening a window.
So it's interesting though. You mentioned about watching this as a movie, and I've mentioned before on the podcast that when I watched Doctor Who as a kid, the PBS station would broadcast edited movie format episodes. So you'd watch Terminus, and instead of seeing the 4 different parts, whether it is on different days or as one, they'd cut out all the cliffhangers and watch it as a movie, and maybe that's why I seem to recall this episode being a little more interesting. Although, admittedly, for preparation for this podcast, I pretty much watch them all 4 in a row anyways, so you don't get quite the cliffhanger concern. But it is kind of interesting though that I do remember this episode a little more fondly than watching it as separate episodes.
Yeah, yeah. So this is the only time I've seen it, and I mean, I agree. I like the concept, and it's interesting. There were, like you mentioned, Turlough and Tegan spend most of the time crawling through ductwork. I mean,
they basically do nothing else.
Yes, it's basically like Die Hard for 2 hours for them, or however long it is, hour and a half. And so there's that. But yeah, I mean, there are interesting elements that come out in this, and you have interesting guest characters and that sort of stuff. So let's dig into some of it.
Yeah, actually, before we dig into it, I had another piece of news I wanted to mention at the top of the show that I forgot.
Oh, okay.
So let me do that real quick. So Big Finish has, as soon as I'm blanking on her name now. The actress who plays the fugitive doctor.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, Joe Martin.
Yeah.
As soon as Joe Martin appeared in Fugitive of the Jadoon, I said, I want my Big Finish for box set Fugitive Doctor audio plays. And Big Finish is now doing that. So right. they have signed Joe Martin to do Fugitive Doctor plays. The first set is available for pre-order. At the same time, they announced Sacha Dhawan as the Spy Master is getting his own series too, and the first set of that is also available. So the 2 breakout characters of Jodie Whittaker's era of Doctor Who, the Fugitive Doctor and the Spy Master, are both going to have continuing adventures. In the Fugitive Doctor's case, it's set after Fugitive of the Jadoon. So they're not going back to tell the story at this point. They're not going back to tell the story of her time with the Division. They're going to be telling her story on the run.
I bet that's to give future showrunners space.
Exactly. Also, they have a new series now set around the War Doctor. After the War Doctor was introduced, played by John Hurt, they made a number of plays with John Hurt as the War Doctor. They did several sets of that, and they had plans for more, and they even had scripts, but then John Hurt died. And so what they've done now is they've cast another actor who is known as a John Hurt impersonator to play a younger version of the War Doctor. And it's called The War Doctor Begins. And I've got the first set. I've already listened to the first play. It's set immediately after his regeneration. So right after Night of the Doctor, and he's still coming to terms with his shift in identity and who he is now, and is he the Doctor anymore? They also have a set coming up featuring the War Doctor and David Tennant. David Tennant has been doing a lot of Big Finish recently, including team-ups with other Doctors. So like I've already heard the 10th Doctor and 4th Doctor set, which is pretty cool. But if you like the Fugitive Doctor or the Spy Master or the War Doctor, or David Tennant, Big Finish has a bunch of stuff for you right now.
Cool.
Excellent.
Awesome.
Excellent.
So as we mentioned, this is the second of the Black Guardian trilogy. Just to recap, we had the Modern Undead was the first one that introduced us to both the Black Guardian and Turlo, who is an alien on Earth.
Yeah, we knew the Black Guardian before from the Key to Time series, but we haven't covered that on the show yet.
Okay, I hadn't seen him before. So
I was going to say, we should be getting pretty close for that one, but with our look back at number 4. But
that's the Fourth Doctor? Okay. So he's a Time Lord? Right? No.
He's sort of, I don't know if he's technically an Eternal, but he's one of these supremely powerful entities in the universe. He's counterbalanced by the White Guardian, and they sort of play chess with the universe.
Think kind of a Q type character.
Yeah.
Okay. So the Black Guardian is guiding Turlo to take steps to take control of the TARDIS, even as Tegan is very suspicious of Turlo, and he's very patronizing toward her. I mean, like infuriatingly so, as she confronts him. And
well, of course, he's, we found out, of course, that he's from another planet. He's not from Earth, so of course he's superior to those silly, ridiculous Earthlings.
Right. He was really obnoxious in Modern Undead, and only slightly less so now.
He gets better.
Yeah.
I did appreciate a discussion that he and Tegan had, because she's extremely suspicious of him, and he's sneaking in with good reason. I mean, he's sneaking around on the TARDIS. The Black Guardian is directing him how to do sabotage. He has him open one of the roundels, and he even the Black Guardian uses the word roundel.
Yep.
Yeah.
Which is in New Who, they seem to have forgotten that word, and even the Doctor is just talking about those round things.
Yeah.
But back in the day, they were called roundels, which is a real term. It's even an architectural term, although in architecture it refers to a kind of round fortress. But it also can mean a decorative disc or medallion, which is presumably where they got it for here. But the Black Guardian is having Turlo open roundels and switch things around, and Tegan doesn't see him doing this, but she's very suspicious, and they have a big argument. And he points out at one point that, she could be nice. I mean, he's much more polite than she is. I mean, in some superficially at least. And he talks about her sledgehammer tactics. And she says, well, at least my sledgehammer tactics are honest, as opposed to your slimy politeness. And this is a kind of, I don't know if this kind of cultural disconnect happens between Australians and people of what would be Turlo's social class in Britain, but we have this in America between North and South, where Northerners, like think New Yorkers, are famously blunt, whereas Southerners are famously polite. And it's really just two different ways of processing social situations. They both work, but to people from a northern blunt perspective, Southern politeness can seem
insincere, maybe
insincere, and to people from a Southern perspective, northern bluntness can seem unnecessarily bombastic.
Right,
but really they're just two ways of processing social situations. And I thought it was fascinating to see this cultural difference between Tegan and Turlo.
Yeah, he tells her, like, being rude isn't honesty. Like, she says, at least I'm honest. He's like, rudeness isn't honesty. It's just rudeness.
No, but it can entail honesty.
Yeah. Also interesting at this point, we get introduced to the companions' rooms. Obviously they have to live somewhere on the TARDIS. And in New Who, we never see, like, the bedrooms. Like, we've seen a few other TARDIS rooms, but never, like, where they live. Well, and so we get to see Tegan's room and Adric's old room now being given over to Turlo. Sorry, Nyssa's room and Turlo's new room.
And we've seen some of these rooms before. I mean, in Classic Who, we've seen several companions' bedrooms, usually, of course, the same set, but we've seen them before.
Including Adric's, like we saw it in Earthshock, as I recall.
Right. So, and you mentioned Turlo messes with the console. Don't ever mess with the console. Just don't. And it causes a dimensional instability, which is focused on Nyssa's bedroom. And the outside universe is breaking in, and the doctor's, there's a doorway opens up, and Nyssa, go through it or you'll die. And so she has to go through the doorway into this other ship. And apparently the TARDIS has a failsafe that if it starts breaking up, it locks onto the closest spacecraft, and it doesn't land. It connects to it like a doorway, like an airlock sort of thing, which I think is interesting that it didn't just land there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and they don't explain why it doesn't just land, although you could headcanon that of if it's breaking up, it may not be safe for it to land. It might rip apart, the spaceship if it landed and then fell apart. I like Tegan says, why have you never mentioned this failsafe before? And the doctor says, it's never worked before.
That sounds comforting.
Yeah, and it's like all the way back to the second Doctor Who story, or the third Doctor Who story, where the two-parter, where they were Edge of Destruction, where they were trapped in the vortex and in danger of horrible stuff happening. It's like, yeah, it could have worked there, and it didn't.
Would have been handy.
Yeah.
So Tegan goes through. I'm sorry, Nyssa goes. I'm going to keep doing that. Nyssa goes through the doorway and then wanders off. And then the doctor ends up going through. He jams the door open with a chair, which is a nice throw, by the way, by the doctor. Really,
a very flimsy chair too. It's like just one of those cheapo office chairs that doesn't even swivel, and he just throws it and lodges the door open.
Yeah, it's like the ones you see in the doctor's waiting room. And he tells Tegan to stay there in the TARDIS while he goes to look for Nyssa. But of course, this is Doctor Who. Companions never do what they're told. And so she, of course, follows him out, and Turlo follows her. And the door shuts behind them, locking them out of the TARDIS.
And we should mention, too, that this is one of the creepiest doors, ever, because it's got literally a skull painted in multiple colors.
Right.
Yeah, it looks like a bunch of graffiti artists have been tagging this place with creepy skull logos.
It actually kind of looks like a Grateful Dead type logo or something like that. Kind of psychedelic skull type.
It's very heavy metal. Yeah.
Yeah, well, speaking of heavy metal, then 80s hair band then invades this ship, these pirates, the big hair aliens, and they take the Doctor and Nyssa captive because they don't understand that this is basically a death ship. They're the worst pirates ever. They attack like, oh, we're gonna get rich off of this thing. Nope, it's a ship carrying full of pandemic victims. Yeah, so they take the Doctor and Nyssa captive. Meanwhile, Tegan, this was a confusing sequence. Tegan is looking for Nyssa and hears her calling them from behind a door, but she can't be there. Why was she hearing Nyssa through this doorway, which on the other side of the door are actually the leprosy victims? Why?
I just thought it was Nyssa's voice echoing down the hallway, and Tegan was uncertain of where the voice was coming from.
Yeah, I guess. But Nyssa was already captured by this point. I don't know. It was really weird. Maybe that's what it is.
Well, this is the moment where we're heading out of the first episode. So this is our cliffhanger. We need something dramatic, and Tegan is thinking she's hearing Nyssa behind this door, but when the door opens, all of these creepy bandaged leper arms come out and seize her.
For some reason.
Yeah, and well, it looks really cool, so I'm willing to forgive them because this is the cliffhanger.
Sure.
And then the younger guy, the younger space pirate, whose name is Alvir, which I couldn't get out of my head. So in the Legion of Superheroes in the 31st century, Alvir is a tiny Daxamite child who becomes obsessed with Darkseid. And so I keep having the name Alvir. It's hyphenated like a Kryptonian name, Kal-El Alvir. I kept having that in my head. But whoever the actor is who plays Alvir in this episode really earns his pay at the end of part one, because he's screaming about, this is, now I know where we are. This is Terminus, where the Lazars come to die, and we're all going to die. And he's screaming about this, and it's very effective, I thought.
Yeah.
Yeah. Lazars, which is interesting. The lepers are called Lazars. Is that a Lazarus reference?
Presumably, but they never make that explicit.
Yeah.
They instead explain it as Lazar's disease. So
Right.
presumably there would have been someone named Lazar who either had or discovered the disease at some point.
And if they get touched by one of the Lazars, they're going to get the disease and die, which apparently Tegan is immune because she gets touched by all the Lazars.
And the doctor, and it's also airborne.
Yeah.
Well, they do explain that Nyssa got cut somewhere, although I don't remember if we actually see it on screen, but that her thumb got cut, and that's how she got it.
Oh. I guess,
Okay.
yeah. Okay.
They need to be clear on their method of plague transmission here.
Well, if they were only wearing masks. Sorry. Sorry.
Oh.
Not going to go there.
Space masks don't work. Space masks don't work.
Although they do need the big bubble head air masks, helmets for the hair, but still.
Yeah.
They have to accommodate their hair.
Huge. Yeah. What is obvious, though, even if Lazarus sounds like Lazarus, what is obvious is Terminus. Terminus is simply Latin for the end.
The end.
Yep.
It's the end of the line. So at this point, I was thinking, why does Turlo obey the Black Guardian? Because if the Black Guardian needs Turlo to attack the Doctor, he can't. If he could attack Turlo remotely, why can't he attack the Doctor remotely? Why does he need Turlo?
Shh, it's art. You don't question art.
Sorry. I mean, I get that later on he zaps him through the little votive lamp thing that Turlo's carrying around.
I know it looks like a little votive candle holder. It looks like a little candle holder that he's got in his palm, and it lights up, and he talks to the Black Guardian.
Yeah.
So the deal is that the Black Guardian will help Turlo get home to his home planet Trion if he kills the Doctor for him.
Mm-hmm.
But Turlo, like a normal person, is very squeamish about killing other people and doesn't want to do it. What is never clear is if the Black Guardian is such a powerful being, why doesn't he attack the Doctor himself?
Right.
And a headcanon way is, okay, it's Guardian rules. Like he would break some kind of, the White Guardian would come get him if he acted directly.
Mm-hmm.
So he has to work through surrogates or something like that.
Right. Like 80s Cold War spy novel.
Yeah. And it's possible he doesn't have quite the power that he wants to think. Again, that's another headcanon thing of he's not as powerful, but he can control Turlo because Turlo's got the little votive candle communication device.
Right. Meanwhile, Olvir, who I kept calling Oliver in my head, says that Terminus is run by a commercial company called Terminus, and he has this line: "They just play on irrational fear, just like the old plagues. They terrified people, and this is no different. It isn't something you'd admit to." And I'm thinking, wow, this is just like ripped out of social media from 2021. Like
Very
the old plagues,
contemporaneous
remember?
for us, yes.
Yeah.
I also like how as soon as they mentioned we're on Terminus, the Doctor turns to Nyssa and says, "Let's get out of here." Like, doesn't want to stay and help. Just let's get out of here.
Yeah.
Oh, what a nice place. Oh, time to go. And then we see the Veneer. They are running Terminus. They wear this skeleton-looking armor, which is apparently a radiation suit. So, it holds back the radiation. And as you mentioned, they are a slave labor force. They don't want to be there. I mean, who else would you get to work there, I guess?
Yeah. One thing to kind of notice about them, so they're called the Veneer, and they have very Nordic-sounding names like Bor, Arak, Valgard, and so forth. And there's a reason for that. They're space Vikings, essentially.
Yes.
The Veneer in Norse mythology are the subordinate tribe of gods. So in ancient Scandinavian religion, in Northern European religions, you had these two tribes of gods. The Aesir had Odin and Thor and those guys, and they were the ones that the Norse worshipped. They worshipped the Aesir, but they also knew about this other tribe of gods called the Veneer, who were kind of subordinate to the Aesir. And so here we have these characters who are subordinates. They're slaves to the Terminus Corporation, named the Vanir, and they're given these Norse-sounding names. And I kind of want to interpret the Garm, even though they never make this clear, but I kind of want to interpret him as like a cipher for the Fenris wolf from Norse mythology.
Yeah, actually, if you're a Tolkien fan, the Vanir versus the Aesir would be like the Valar versus the Maiar, like the greater gods, the lesser gods, and that sort of thing. So
I was thinking like in AD&D, Dungeons and Dragons, you've got gods and demigods.
Right, they're sort of the demigods.
Well, in Norse mythology, the Vanir and the Aesir are the same species. They're all gods. It's just they're two different tribes of gods, and one tribe has been dominant historically. They've like won the battles and stuff.
Okay.
So Nyssa starts feeling sick. She starts getting sick and starts taking her clothes off for some reason.
So here's the story on that. Nyssa is wearing she used to be very prim and proper and like buttoned up to the neck.
I remember
when she was first introduced. And her clothing has gradually gotten more casual. And now she's wearing a very skimpy blouse and a skirt and jack
mini
boots.
Skirt. Yeah.
Yeah. It's not quite a mini skirt, but it's a short skirt.
Yeah.
And over the calf jack boots, or whatever you call them for women, riding boots or something. Yep. And they're not really riding boots, but originally the script writer had been assuming she was going to be wearing the same costume as the previous season, in which she had a brooch. And he wrote it for her to drop the brooch as a clue to tell the doctor where she was, so he could like follow the trail to find her.
Right.
And then they changed her costume in the gap between seasons, and she didn't have the brooch anymore. So according to Sarah Sutton, the actress who plays Nyssa, as a thank you for her male fans for her final story, she dropped her skirt instead of her brooch, leaving her essentially wearing what looks like undergarments. It's a sort of shaft dress, but it's so thin it looks like a negligee.
Yeah. What do they call the camisole? Something, I don't know. I get a wife and 3 daughters, and I don't know any of that stuff.
Well, I've seen it what she's wearing referred to as a shift, but apparently it's not, because I looked it up, and a shift, technically speaking, does not have a tuck at the waist, and this one does, making it a shaft dress, which I had not been familiar with before.
Okay. It looked more like her top was actually part of a longer dress, not just like a top and then something on a skirt underneath.
All our female listeners are now yelling at their phones.
Either way, you just get this bizarre scene where she drops her skirt and she's got something else underneath it. So
I'm just feeling so ill. I just need to take my short skirt off. I'm like, okay, if I was a teenage boy, I would be glued to the screen at this point. But that's, I guess, was the fan base. But Oliver at the same time talks about how he lost his sister to the sickness, and because he's traumatized by this, he lets Nyssa get dragged off by the little robot that. So what happens is the ship arrives at Terminus, and everyone has to get off, and then the ship has to be sterilized. And if anybody's on board, this little robot comes around and drags them off the ship into Terminus.
And not very good robot, because people can sneak by it very easily. Literally crawl underneath its viewpoint.
It's not a very effective droid, and neither is the sterilization all that effective, because everybody gets exposed to it.
Yeah. Also, the droid is. Notice how Star Wars that droid is. This is clearly it's like a multi-armed, non-humanoid droid.
Yeah.
And it looks like something you'd see in Star Wars. So at least they were trying.
Star Wars.
Yeah, exactly.
So the Vanir apparently need regular doses of Ketracel White to remain alive. Sorry.
They need regular rave glow sticks.
That's right. Now, to their credit, this predates D3 Stein by some period of time, but that's what it reminded me of. But it's called hydromel.
Which would be Greek for like honey water, or which is mead. There's another Norse reference for you. Honey water is mead, and hydromel would mean honey water or sweet water.
Yes. And it's apparently an anti-radiation treatment.
Mm-hmm.
And
but it's really a common glow stick that you would buy at Six Flags and let your kids wave around in the dark, and it glows
Yes.
green.
Yep, exactly.
That's where it was. There and the Terminus Corporation has been watering it down for them, which is nice of them. The Lazar, as part of this process, are taken away to the Garm, and never seen. They're taken into the Forbidden Zone and never seen again, which implies that they are killed off.
Yeah, but it turns out that's not true. They aren't killed off. So the Forbidden Zone is forbidden apparently because it has very high radiation. There's like an engine leak in there that they've never fixed.
Mm.
And the Garm exposes people to a very high dose of radiation, which does cure the Lazar's disease, but also years down the line can give them radiation diseases. Why it doesn't give them immediate, acute radiation sickness, I don't know. Because typically if you get a really high dose of radiation, you become sick now.
Yeah.
And you either survive it or you don't. But if you survive it, then later you can get cancer or lymphoma or whatever. But there is this first initial round of sickness.
Right.
And that doesn't seem to happen in these cases. But apparently it's kind of a conveyor belt. You go in and the Garm deals with you, and then you get put on a pickup ship,
Right.
like on the other side of the station beyond the Forbidden Zone, and get taken off Terminus and go somewhere, but we don't know hardly anything about that.
Well, and Nyssa is found in a decontamination chamber.
Mm-hmm.
So, and she does mention, or she wakes up basically in this chamber. So you can imagine that could be that initial sickness that come from that. But
right. But I think she was saying that because the treatment is so, brute force that most people don't survive it.
Correct.
And so they
many, but yeah, that's correct. Yes.
Yeah. I didn't get the sense that people were coming out the other end, but I guess because Olvir's sister doesn't come out the other end.
Right. It goes by really fast, but at the end, the doctor is talking to Valgard, who's one of the Veneer, and says, you need to give this message to the pickup ship. And Valgard is like, the what? The pickup ship where they come and get the people who've been cured.
Right.
And I don't know if this is the first Valgard has heard about a pickup ship, but they do mention it.
Oh, I thought it was just the doctor assuming there was a pickup ship.
No, because we know people get healed. We know people get healed and they're taken, but we don't see it. We don't see the dock on the other side of Terminus where the pickup ship comes. But yeah, it's
this is a bit of a writing flaw because it's implied early on for dramatic purposes that no one returns from Terminus.
Yeah.
And
it's not even implied,
apparently
it's
stated. Well, yeah, they state it, and then they walk it back at the end.
Okay.
But they do walk it back. By the way, I don't know who the actor is who plays Valgard, but Patrick Stewart was considered for the role.
Oh, that would be cool.
So, yeah, if this had been a slightly different timeline, Patrick Stewart would have been playing that.
I've seen him in other things, that actor. Mm-hmm. Like I was looking at him, I didn't look him up, but I've seen him in other shows and so. Although, he was considered for a bunch of different roles in Doctor Who, but I'm trying to think of other things I've seen him in. But anyway,
the actor who really stood out for me, I don't know his name, but among the Veneer, there's one actor who I think did a really good job, and it's the guy who plays Boar.
Yes.
Boar has this, he's a genuinely likable guy. He puts his own life at risk to help other people. Mm-hmm. He basically gives himself fatal radiation poisoning to help others. He later gets hydromel, but he's not expecting that. But his performance is split between, we briefly see him in his right mind, and then we see him in this kind of helpful but demented state after he's been radiation poisoned, and he can't remember things, and he says, "Oh, the short-term memory is always the first thing to go." and his performance is really nice, shifting between these, and then after he gets the hydromel, he's more back in his right mind, but shifting between his sane self and his demented but helpful self is really interesting to watch. I appreciated his performance, and of course it's the writing, but I appreciated his performance of this part a lot more than I appreciate shouty standard villain writing.
Right. So, just going back to the Forbidden Zone and the radiation is caused by an exploded engine, and the other engines are about to explode. That's our cliffhanger, tension of this episode. And this is when, about the time that the Doctor and Cory, which is the female pirate, discover that Terminus was a time-traveling ship that jettisoned its enormous unstable fuel supply in emergency, which it created the universe. So basically, Terminus created the universe.
This makes... Okay, so scientific point number 1. The Doctor at one point is looking at a space map and goes, that's funny, Terminus is right at the center of the known universe. And I'm like, okay, everywhere is at the center of the known universe because we can't see the universe's edge. So wherever you are standing in the visible universe, it looks like you're at the center. Furthermore, in Big Bang cosmology, there is no center to the universe because all of the universe was compressed, all of the space was compressed into this point, which then expanded in an inflationary way very early on, and there is no identifiable center to any of this. Furthermore, did Terminus really carry all of the atoms in the universe in its fuel tank? Because that's how much energy came out of the Big Bang once it cooled down and started clumping together to form atoms. This is a completely implausible idea. Also, point number 3, it wasn't hydrogen. Event 1 was not a hydrogen inrush. When the Big Bang occurred, the energy was so dense and the entropy was so low that it did not form atoms. In fact, it didn't even allow light to travel. It was like 300,000 or a million years after the Big Bang before the energy density became low enough for light to turn on and light to start propagating. And it was after that you got atoms. Hydrogen was the big one. You also got a little bit of helium and a little bit of lithium, but wow, they got the science wrong on this. And now I've got that out of my system.
I will give them the center of the known universe because that word known means finite. They don't know the complete infinite universe. So yes, if you had a map of the part of the universe that was known at that time, there is going to be a center point.
Well, didn't the Fourth Doctor just go to the edge of the universe a few of our episodes ago? But
in what story?
What was the one where where they ended up in the underground slave labor planet there?
That.
Yeah.
I'm blanking on it too.
Let's just say science is not their forte on this show.
Yeah. But so, I mean, I agreeing with everything you said, Jimmy, about the Big Bang and all that, I can at least give them that, yes, if there is a part of the universe that is known, there is a center point to it, and this Terminus is there. But of course, that's going to change as they know more of the universe. So
it's also like looking at a map of the United States and saying, funny, Topeka is like right in the center of this map.
Pretty much.
It's like, okay, so
it's
what?
Nonsense, yes.
Yeah. Yeah, right. I did. It was just funny. It was the Underworld was the Fourth Doctor story where they went to the edge of the universe. Well, they've gone far afield from their original mandate of teaching kids science. Let's just stipulate that. So if another engine explodes, it would not create a new universe. It would destroy the known universe. Is the Doctor's thing.
Yeah, that was scientific point number 4. Yeah, in 10 billion years, maybe.
Right. So Turlo, Turlo is sort of, I don't know how to describe him, but he's sort of the catalyst for all the bad things that happen in his time with the Doctor, because like we said, he messed with the console. They ended up here. Then he messes with he and Tegan are stuck underneath the decks of this ship in the smuggling holes or something. And so he's messing with stuff to get doors open and starts this chain reaction to destroy the universe. I'm not sure how messing with the ship that brought them to Terminus causes a chain reaction problem on Terminus. unless they are somehow connected. But we'll move on past that.
They've got bad Wi-Fi security.
Very bad. Meanwhile, Olvir comes to rescue Nyssa, who's been hung out for King Kong, Fay Ray, and so he comes to rescue her. And while he's battling, I like that my spell check changed it from Valgard to Vulgar, which is kind of fun. He battles Valgard. The Garm takes away Nyssa. He wails, "Oh no, Nyssa! Where is she gone?" And it's like they're literally on screen, like next to him. I just thought it was hysterical.
You can see the Garm's legs as he's carrying off Nyssa in the background. Yeah,
right. Like he's literally like 6 feet from him.
Yeah,
where is she gone?
Yeah. Well, and speaking of Nyssa being carried by the Garm, every time he picks her up, she immediately faints. Because not like she's there, kicking and screaming like Fay Ray. No, she's like limp.
Well, if I had a big doggy man that would carry me around, I would go limp in his arms too, because it's like you look very cuddly. So Nyssa realizes after she gets the dosage, it turns out that the Garm does cure people. He's not a monster. He is helpful. Wants to be helpful. Wants to hold a door. You remind me of Hodor from Game of Thrones. Nyssa realizes it's a uncontrolled treatment, random massive dose of radiation, and then decontamination, hoping it works. And so she decides that she's going to stay behind to make it work. And I should mention, at the beginning of the episode, she was working on this
enzyme
that Adric had done all the math calculations for. And so she was trying to recreate the work and wasn't getting the math right. So maybe if she used a computer, not an abacus, that would help. But in any case, she's decided that this is her life work. She wants to, her time, tagging along with the doctor is over, and she really wants to stay behind and make a difference and help all of these Lazars on Terminus.
And this is a better exit than what they gave Mel, where she decides to just start traveling with Sabalom Glitz out of the air for no reason.
Right.
So here we have an actual motive for the character leaving, and this is a pretty good one. This is one of the voluntary companion departures.
Yep.
Where a character, and it's not a love. I've fallen in love, and so I have to leave now. It's reasonably set up. I also like the way they handle the acting that Sarah Sutton does, and the lines they give her as she informs Tegan first, and then Tegan protests and tells the doctor, but Nyssa is adamant. In fact, she says, "I'm adamant," and it's a reasonable exit. You could write it a little bit better, but it's pretty well done. Unfortunately, so Peter Davison and Sarah Sutton apparently were not happy about this. Sarah Sutton apparently did not want to go. At least I've read that, and she would have been happy to stay on the series, but they decided to write her out. And of all the companions he had, Peter Davison has repeatedly said that he felt Nyssa's character best suited his doctor. So she was kind of like his favorite companion, and they wrote her out, and she didn't even want to go.
Yeah. I was afraid that what they were going to do was make a romance plot between her and Olvir. That I thought that's what they were building for. I'm glad they didn't.
And they kind of implied that, at least on his part, that there was interest there.
Yeah.
And again, that whole thing, Nyssa, where are you? I will find you. Yeah. I will avenge you, or however you want to put it. But and I really did like the Tegan Nyssa part, because you don't hear what's said. All you see is basically Tegan's reaction.
Yeah.
And then she charges up to the doctor. It's like, convince her not to do this. And the doctor's like, what? Do what? Not do what?
Right. So how many more seasons is there of the Fifth Doctor? There's one more after this one, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
And the 5 Doctors special.
Okay. So that we do get more time with it. And how long has Tegan got with the doctor?
She's there mostly to the end. She is eventually, she's going to leave voluntarily too. And you know how she kind of stormed out once.
Right.
She's going to storm out again, and this time it'll stick. And then we have Turlo. He goes pretty quickly thereafter. He does get back to his home planet.
Okay.
And then they introduce Perry in the same story that Turlo goes in.
Yep.
And then the episode after that is Caves of Androzani.
Right.
So Turlo's around for a while then.
Yeah, Turlo's around for the next season.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize he was beyond the Black Guardian trilogy.
Yeah.
And by the way, we were talking about Nyssa taking off her clothes. She does have more clothes on than Perry does when we first see her.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah.
Perry's in a bikini.
Perry's in a bikini. Yeah. Also, there's another companion for Peter Davison we haven't even got to yet, but we're about to get to him.
Oh.
Oh, no.
We have to mention him.
Is this the robot that I've heard so much about?
Chameleon. Yeah, it's the robot.
Failed attempt to do a non-human companion that
it's like canine but
work.
didn't work.
Yeah.
Canine, but not good. Oh, gosh.
But fortunately, he only really appears in like 2 or 3 stories.
Okay. So,
and the doctor kills him.
Yep.
Good. So that sounds satisfying.
Yeah.
So, Father Cory, any last notes on this episode?
Nothing here. It was an enjoyable enough episode.
Yeah. Jimmy?
I agree. I have in my notes creepy, realistic, bright light creeping around Terminus. Because in a lot of these shows, when they want to go creepy, they put it all in the dark. And this time they didn't. Terminus is brightly lit. And despite that fact, people are creeping around, and it's effectively eerie. So I thought it's a little slow paced, but I think it does have this kind of cinematic, slow burn feel to it.
It has that the dystopian feel. It's not like Star Trek, like of this era, like Next Gen, which had a more brightly lit sort of sets and that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But it has its own appeal. It feels sort of a used universe dystopian feel to the sets here. So that was pretty good. Awesome. All right. So I mentioned we have some listener feedback, and so this is some feedback that goes way back. This comes from Ted via email, who says, long story, so I'll keep it short. I started reading Space Helmet for a Cow, Part 2. That's the book you mentioned, Jimmy, about the making of Doctor Who. So to follow the book, I started a rewatch again of New Who, and of course, re-listened to the Secrets of Doctor Who podcasts. Upon listening to some listener feedback at the end of an episode, there were some comments about Adric's last adventure with the Doctor in Earthshock. As from the perspective of Terminus, that's only a few episodes ago.
Right.
The comments were very insightful because one of the comments was from me, ha ha ha, Ted. And one of the hosts commented they were surprised that there were not more comments specifically about Adric, and it was said that if anyone had any further comments regarding Adric's departure, they were welcome. So more than a year later, I have some more to add. I think that the fact Adric was involved with the destruction of the dinosaurs just added one more thing for fans to use as a reason why they dislike him. I know, because everyone loves dinosaurs. With all kidding aside, it was refreshing for the Doctor to have a companion like Adric, and later Turlo, who worked behind the Doctor's back to undermine him. I would love to hear the team's thoughts on this subject. Then he had something else to add after that, but we could talk about this part first. And I was thinking that about Turlo. It's interesting to have a companion on board the TARDIS who is not working with the Doctor, but against him. It's unusual.
Father Cory, you first.
I agree in some extent. I think the problem with Adric was he was so annoying about it. I mean, he was just kind of an annoying character. But with Turlo, there was a much clearer reason why he was working against the Doctor. He was in really slavery to the Black Guardian. He was stuck with the Black Guardian. Adric was just like he flowed wherever the winds blew. Mm-hmm. If he felt like the protagonist, the Doctor, was the one that he needed to follow, he followed the Doctor. If he felt the antagonist was the one to follow, whoever was against the Doctor, then he immediately switched sides and would just jump back and forth. Adric was just kind of blew in the wind when it came to where his loyalties were, and that was kind of part of the issue I had with him, at least.
Yeah, I give him props for trying to think creatively about how companions can be used on the show. And I agree. Adric's just an idiot who keeps falling for villains' lies. Whereas the situation with Turlo is much more clearly defined in dramatic terms, and so I give him props for that. I still think that the Black Guardian is it's very it's very melodramatic writing. It's very ham-fisted. You know, the Black Guardian is just constantly demanding that Turlough kill the Doctor, and when Turlough is pointing out, well, I can't, he's not here, the Black Guardian is like, kill him anyway, which, you know, he's just irrational in his hatred of the Doctor, and it's very ham-fisted writing. But at least they're trying to think of creative ways to use companions. They also don't let the Turlough situation drag out too long, because the next Peter Davison story we'll do is Enlightenment, which is the third part of the Black Guardian trilogy, where Turlough is finally forced to choose between the Doctor and the Black Guardian. And of course, since he's going to be around for the next season, he chooses for the Doctor, as you would expect him to.
Yeah.
But I do appreciate them trying to be creative. I think it is more successful in Turlough's case than Adric's. I was just thinking, you reminded me, I was going to mention this anyway. So there's a guy on YouTube who has a channel called Sycorax Rock, and he's got this wonderful project he's doing called 13 Songs for 13 Doctors, where he takes a pop song that was, you know, around when a given Doctor was on the air, and rewrites the lyrics to fit the tenure of that Doctor, and then makes a video out of it and records the song. And he's got all these clips from, and it's really a wonderful project. You should go by and subscribe to his channel. But in his 5th Doctor video, it's a rewrite of Total Eclipse of the Heart. And it's called Total Eclipse of the Celery Heart. And a couple of the lyrics, like early on in the song, at one point it's like, every now and then I get all angry at Adric because he always falls for obvious plots. And it's like, yep, that's true. And then later on in the song, the key is shifted a little bit, and he's singing, Terminus is doomed and Nyssa's gone away, and I kind of got the feeling I got dumped for the plague.
That's a good line. Yeah, you know, it feels like Turlough is their attempt to reboot what they thought they were going to do with Adric, which is, you know, have an agent of chaos undermining the Doctor. And because Adric was just, like you said, Father Cory, blowing in the wind, and sometimes he was friends and sometimes he wasn't. Turlough is very clearly at the beginning against the Doctor, and then switches, and it's a clear switch, and then we stick with one or the other.
Adric was originally envisioned as being the Artful Dodger. And wow, did they fail to pull off the Artful Dodger.
Yeah. Then the rest of Ted's email is, I do believe that your 300th episode is coming up in the near future. That's right, about 15 more episodes. And I would love it if that episode was focused on the Doctor's companions, and maybe a ranking of the companions from number 4 to 10, because we all know that the top 3 companions are Jamie, Leela, and Amy. Well, I think...
You might have some arguments about that.
You might have some argument on that, but that's an interesting idea. That might be fun to do as our ranking of the companions.
I thought about, when I read that, I thought, and I don't know exactly how we do this, but you know how those tier ranks are really popular on YouTube now?
Oh, yes.
I would be interested in doing my own tier ranking of the companions.
Like a bracket?
Yeah. So like you've got it's like on Tier Zoo, if you've ever seen the Tier Zoo channel.
Okay.
But I've seen a lot of other channels doing it, and you have like different levels that you put them at. I couldn't rank them one by one and have it be meaningful in the sense of like, this character is ever so slightly better than that character. But I could put them in tiers. Right. And say, okay, like Leela is a tier 1 companion, whereas Katrina is a tier 5 companion, or whatever.
I was thinking maybe doing like a bracket competition where you narrow them down until you get the one companion.
No, this is more like you'd have like S, A, B, C, D. Yeah. S is superior, and then A, B, C, D. Yeah. And then maybe even an F. Like this companion is a complete failure. Just don't even. And a lot of times you'll see that for like card games. You'll see that for video games. Like, you know, I've seen those, you know, and that might actually be a good way to do it, where we could go through and make our own tiers of companions. And it wouldn't have to be all of them. You know, maybe we focus on the major ones, you know, the ones that have more than, say, like 1 episode or 2 episodes with the Doctor.
Right. They would have to be
Or-
people who traveled, but
Or we
yeah.
could each do our own thing. If Dom wants to do a bracket competition among the companions and make them fight to the death because there can be only one, Dom can do that. I'll do my tier zoo of companions or whatever.
I like the idea of the tiers too, but
If it were literal combat, it would of course be Jamie. But yeah, that's just.
I don't know.
know.
Ace might give him a run for his money. Just blow him up.
With Nitro 9 or Leela is really good at throwing Janus thorns.
That's right. Well, and then you've got the Soldier Boy at the end there. What's his name? Danny Pink. So.
I don't think he has the heart.
Nope.
No. Yeah. Anyway, Rory spent a lot of time as a Roman soldier.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Leela is ruthless, though, especially in the early days. She will just throw a Janus thorn at you and not care.
Yep.
Cut your throat without thinking about it. That's true. So very, very good idea. Thank you, Ted, for the interesting ideas. We'll be sure to think about that as we get in just a few months to our 300th episode. All right, that does it for this time. We'd like to take a moment to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create the Secrets of Doctor Who, including John T., Leah H., Ben H., Christian G., and Philip C. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue the Secrets of Doctor Who and all the shows at StarQuest. You can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. And we'd also like to thank Victor Lambs, who edits the show for us every week. So that's it from us. We'd love to hear what you think of this Fifth Doctor story, Terminus, or of the idea of ranking companions. You can let us know by commenting on the show at sqpn.com or the Secrets of Doctor Who Facebook page, or send an email to drwho@sqpn.com. Or visit the new StarQuest Discord community at sqpn.com/discord. We'll be back next time, and we'll be discussing the 12th Doctor story, Time Heist. Until then, Jimmy Akin, thank you for joining me in sharing the Secrets of Doctor Who.
Thanks, Dom.
Father Cory Sticha, thank you as well.
Thank you, Dom.
And once again, I'm Dom Bettinelli. Thank you for listening to the Secrets of Doctor Who on StarQuest.
Look at my companions hurry back to the TARDIS, then collapse upon the ground. Look around. Isn't that the trouble with regeneration? You just never know what you're gonna get. Every now and then I get all angry at Adric, cause he always falls for obvious plots. Every now and then I get a little bit terrified when Tegan's got that look in her eyes. Every mythic story has a start. Every London fire has a spark. Whoops, I dropped the sonic pteroleptals, destroy it. Guess I'll have to improvise. Every now and then I'm getting framed for a murder that some upper crusty's brother commits. Every Cyberman just looks a little bit different when the camera's pointed straight at their bum. All these Cybermen would be a little bit chiller if they watched a sunset or smelled a rose. Takes a nosedive. Guess the mass extinction was his fault. Oh my God, time flies. Every Seraphin is a gestalt. Omega is back alive. What's it doing? Putting Amsterdam in terror. And the face on the mask, it makes 5. But did you forget the wearer? And the Mara still survives. Dude, is that Martin Clunes? Modron's race is desperate at the end of the line. And Turlo's got a shadow looming all of the time. There was no time. Terminus is doomed and Nyssa's gone away. And I kinda get the feeling I got done for the plague. Somebody give me a light. Eternals are so impolite. Sometimes it's plain as black. Once upon a time, good innings were mine. Now I feel I'm taking a walk. There's one thing I can trust, my totally sweet celery stalk. ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Peter Howell. Time crash goes here. Counterfeit King John. Master's trying to ruin the Magna Carta. Every now and then he falls apart. Now I'm on the Eye of Orion, but something leaves me empty, 'cause Bruce has abducted my lives. He's using them to play D&D, and beneath the ocean lies this ridiculous thing. The folks of Little Hodgecombe never gave up the fight. The TARDIS got destroyed by a meteorite. Tegan's had enough, there's Daleks in the docks, and it's so goddamn grim even the Daleks have space parks. And where's Chameleon tonight? The Master's trying to start a fight. The Master's gonna see. Wonder what's in store on this world, what's it called? Androzani Minor, you say. I got a funny feeling everything might be okay. If you give a fig, why must I wear the sprig? Well, this might just come as a shock. It could save my life, my totally sweet celery stalk. Braveheart Tegan. My totally sweet celery stalk.